that big enough to fit through? No. Okay. Welcome to a new project for the 1988 Jeep Comanche I like to call Project Comanche. Right now, for the next few months, we're going to work on getting the engine prepped for starting. Here's all the things we're working on. The fuel tank is semi-installed. The starter, I put that on, but it's not wired. The next thing I'm going to work on is building the dash and wiring the cab. So when you buy a painless wiring harness, it can be a little overwhelming because there's a lot of wires, but they've bundled these in a way that this loop of wire is supposed to go to the back. One loop of wire is supposed to go to the front. One loop of wire is supposed to go to the cab. And one loop of wire is supposed to go to the engine. Plus, they give you a really detailed book on how to hook everything up for, you know, basically whatever vehicle you have. I took that book apart and I put it into a binder with page protectors. So you can see it shows you like just how to hook up each sensor and wire and where they go. So I've got my book out and I'm going through it one little by little, and I'm going to take some notes on which wires I need and which wires I don't. I'm going to figure out which wires I need off of the engine wiring harness that I bought and which ones that I don't. And I won't make you sit through all that, but as I go, I'll update you on every little thing that I do. I was about to start on the wiring and I realized that it would be a lot easier to get in there if I took this door off. And since I want to make this a removable door anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. Alright, so I've taken the seats out and I put the dash back in. Sorry for the echo and the light, I'll move that. I'm going to start going through all this wiring and figure out where everything goes and get that buttoned up. So enjoy the time warp video. Oh, the switch panel I bought came with this little mount piece. You're supposed to fasten this to the switch and then fasten the bracket to the dash so that you can move this up and down, but I already know that this dash is perfectly angled and faces directly toward my face. So I'm going to use this bracket, put a dot in each one of these holes, drill the holes and mount that switch panel right to the dash. I just need to make sure that this being right in the middle is going to clear everything. So if I put that right about there, I think that'll be perfect. In fact, that's better, I think, because I can still reach it and the passenger will reach it just as good. Draw dot, 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 and I'll drill those holes and we'll come right back. What? This drill bit sucks. I bought a drill doctor, but I'm not exactly sure how to use it yet. Okay, now I got these washers to go on the back of that panel. It uses a Phillips head M3 screw because I went and bought longer screws to go through this thicker dash here. And it looks like my holes line up pretty good. I just need to drill a hole behind this panel for this wire to go through. Let's say it's right here. Close enough. Is that big enough to fit through? No. Okay. Is that big enough to fit through? Please say yes. It might be my biggest drill bit. Is that big enough to fit through? No. Okay, we're going to improvise here because that was my largest drill bit. I'm going to wallow this hole. And that fits through barely. Call me if you have any fabrication needs. Let's see now. One thing that needs to happen before that is, and that is to finally peel back this protective seal, because once this is on there, I am leaving it on there. Look at that glass. All right, the bolt through the hole, feed the wire through the hole. Please work. Okay. It looks like that's perfect. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. Once I have all this equipment mounted onto the dash, I'll be able to start hooking up wires, and we'll be able to run the engine, turn the lights on and off, run the fuel tank. It's gonna be good. Good times. That's mounted pretty good. I'm really liking how this turned out so far. This is the fuse panel for this switch panel. And then it has its own breaker. Here's a breaker for my other fuse panel for all the lighting and everything normal for the truck. This is hooked up now, so I can get power to all this stuff and start hooking it all up. Here's my point of view. I can see all the gauges when the steering wheel is straight, of course, even all the way out to my voltage gauge, and I can still reach my switch panel even when I'm sitting straight up in the seat. I can see most of the top of the dash. If I ever needed to add more gauges, I could put them on top right here. Okay, so now that I have this nightlight switch installed, I've changed this switch to a momentary, and that's going to be my starter activation switch. So I'll press my ignition button, I'll make sure this is reset, and I'll press the starter switch, and that should start the engine. I've also got set up on here where, not hooked up yet, but air pump, engine coolant bypass, heater, fan, and then a series of lights. This switch here just disrupts the power wire to the ECM, so if I ever get in trouble or roll the vehicle, I can press this emergency stop button and it kills the engine and kills the fuel. If I need to disconnect power to the truck, I will disconnect that switch there, or one that I'm going to put down here on the floor somewhere. Moving to the next switch, I've got some winch switches. This handicapped one, which I'm going to put my rear locker on. This is my ignition activation switch. So instead of turning a key, I'll push this and I'll turn this and I'll push the starter button and just start the engine and run the truck. On this panel, you've got the horn, you've got signals, you've got hazards, you've got the wiper motor. I've made sure that works in both speeds. I've got some other switches which I'll use for dash lights and for some fun lights behind the dash. For gauges, I've got my coolant gauge hooked up, and you can tell it's less than 100 degrees outside, so it's not going to be even registering on the gauge, but I verified that it works. I've got the engine oil pressure gauge, which is working. I'm getting around 32 psi when cranking the engine. Transmission temp not set up yet. The steering temp not set up yet. The fuel level sensor wire is run but not hooked up yet. And then I've got the voltage sensor. You can see I'm at about 12.3 volts. And then for the air systems gauge, I'm going to have to run an actual line to the back of there. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet. I have some screws here to mount these into the dash once I'm done hooking wires up to them. And then I'm still able to pull these out and work on all the wires. But even if I can't pull them out, I can see everything behind the dash and makes things really easy to troubleshoot as long as this doesn't get too scratched up or dirty. So stick that back in there. This switch here is actually the original Jeep's headlight switch. I did that because, not just because it was convenient, but I think it's really cool that you can see everything moving around back there. Everything functions. When I turn my headlights on, it dims the backlight for these gauges, which is really cool because you don't want your gauges to be shining in your eyes when it's dark out. And also, if it's sunset or sunrise and you can't see your gauges but you need to have your lights on, you can turn this and it turns the backlight back up. So that's pretty cool. I verified that all the lights are going to work. I verified the flashers and the hazards and the windshield wipers and the ECM and the starter motor and all these switches. Everything is working. Now, if you remember from earlier, underneath the dash was a total mess, and I have done hours and hours into cleaning this all up into manageable strands of electric strings so that I can easily, this still has to be hooked up, but this is extra stuff that I'm going to tie up right there because it may get used later. I mounted my fuse block right here. Here's the fuses for the engine wiring harness, and here are my relays for ECM, fuel, and starter. I've still got to put together some fan relays and a reverse switch and a dimmer switch. I haven't gotten to it yet because I don't have parts for it yet. I need to build a cage so that I can mount a radiator, so that I can mount some fans, so that I could set up some fan relays, so that I can get that all wired in anyways. So I'm just going to leave it right there where it sits. But so far everything is looking pretty good. I'm going to hook up a couple extra wires and show you what else I've got going on today, because we had starter relay and fuel relay and everything breadboarded together, and you can see how all my grounds are just kind of twisted and zip tied together. We actually started this thing a couple weeks ago, and I've been keeping it kind of a secret. I let one video out on Shorts and the other platforms, so if you got a sneak peek about that, I'm about to start this again and show you what I've got going on. Okay, well, I've put my earplugs in for this because this is just way too loud without any exhaust. I only have the headers on there. I've gone ahead and hooked all these plugs up. Everything is grounded and good. Let's see if we can get this thing to start. There you have it, folks. Wiring is done. Engine runs. Now it's time to move on to the next project. Who welded this?